Throughout my time in Japan, I've had the opportunity to travel to many different places and have a wide variety of experiences. Some of the most memorable experiences I've had are those that have happened almost by accident as I'm just going about my daily life, or I didn't know about a certain thing when I went to a certain place. Yesterday, I had one of these accidental experiences. My friend and I were heading back up from Gifu City, and since it's a long drive, we often stop by this rest stop on the way home. And it's got a lot of vegetables and sells lots of variety of things. And so he likes to check it out while we're relaxing. I was a little tired, so I just stayed in the car and tried to sleep a little bit. But then I started hearing drums and a lot of people yelling. So I wake up and look out the window, and I saw the following scene. As you saw in the video, there's a large group of people hoisting up this giant shrine with a lot of pink branches coming off, with people dancing around hitting the drums. And so the drums are something that's present in a lot of different festivals, including the Gujo Dance Festival that happens during the summer. And so they're hitting their drums, and then everyone else is hoisting the shrine, a shrine being a place where the Shinto gods typically dwell. And then the long branches coming up out of the shrine are pink, just like the cherry blossoms that are blossoming during the spring. They continued this ceremony for several minutes, after which they set the shrine down on the ground, the drummers continued doing their thing, and everyone else started dismantling the branches coming out of the shrine. So the pink flowers coming off of these branches are made out of Mino paper, which is famous across Japan because they use an ancient Japanese technique for making these paper. And it's very, very thin, but it's relatively strong. I just ripped it. It's relatively strong for paper. It's not like steel naturally. It's still paper, but it is relatively strong paper for how thin it is. As they pulled the branches out of the shrine, they started handing them out to people in the crowd that were still watching the spectacle. I kind of stood back because it seemed like a lot of other people wanted the branches, and I didn't really have any particular need for any, so I decided that it's probably better for the people who want it more to have the opportunity to grab some. Despite my best efforts to stay hidden, they somehow managed to spot the only 6-foot-tall foreigner in the crowd, and they attacked. And by attack, I mean they came up with one of the big branches formed into a ring and just kind of put it over my head as a necklace, saying the typical things like, good, good, that people say to foreigners when they don't know English. So I stood there holding this branch when one of the drummers started walking in my direction. At this point, it's worth noting that one of the most popular things to do during Sakura season is to sit under a tree drinking sake, or the alcoholic drink that is famous in Japan, and just kind of relaxing. So this drummer walks over to me, and I get a nice whiff of Japanese sake that he'd been drinking, and he lets me drum on the drum a little bit, which was kind of fun, and then he starts like running into me with the drum and just kind of leaning up against me until some lady, I assume was his wife, kind of pulled him away and got visibly upset with him. After he was dragged away, I was approached by 2 college students. One of them started talking to me and eventually asked if she and her friend could take a picture with me. In most circumstances, it would be odd for someone to approach a complete stranger and ask them for a photo. But when you're a foreigner living in the middle of rural Japan, it's actually a lot more common than you would imagine. They even brought over one of the jackets that the people who were drumming and carrying the shrine had and put it on me so I could be wearing it for the photo. It took a little while to take the photo because as they were trying to take it, the aforementioned drummer kept walking in between the camera and getting in the picture and doing who knows what. But eventually, we got some kind of picture that was to their satisfaction. After that happened, I just stood around waiting for my friend to finish perusing. However, I did have to move away from the shrine because the people in charge of dismantling it kept coming up to me and putting more branches around my neck. So now I have these two. They ended up giving me a third one as well, but I gave that third one to my friend who was driving me back up home. Eventually, me and my friend hopped back in his car, drove home, and that's the end of the story. At least it would be if my friend didn't know about another festival happening in Mino just later that night. He asked me if I wanted to go, and I was like, sure, why not? So we hopped back in the car, went to another part of Mino, and found the festival. This second festival is called Niwaka, and this is where all of the towns in Mino City will come together and put on performances of both music and skits for the people who want to watch. The way this is set up is there is the stage on which each of the groups would come to perform. As the groups approach the stage, they will be playing music using their flutes, the drums, and then a traditional stringed instrument. After they get to the stage, they continue performing their musical piece, and once they finish, they have one person come up and they have these two wooden blocks, they hit them together and they say, Tozai! Tozai! And then they explain what is about to happen in the skit. After which the skit happens, and they go back into their group, play the music as they walk away. And I happened to film some of this, so let's take a look at that now.
アメリカと北朝鮮の間には日本があるやねんから。ジャパンやな。ジャパンかな。打ち合いにでもなったら、わちんだどうなってまうやな。
それは物置でも隠れんやろな。
これは弱った。おまはん、なんか策はねえかなも。
安倍さん、そんな落ち込まんでも大丈夫や。正面から打ち合っても狙ったところには飛んでかへん。大丈夫や。
本当に大丈夫かな。
絶対に大丈夫やな。
それはまたどうしてやな。
さあ、正面から角を打ってもな。
どうちゃや。
まっすぐには進まんわな。
はい、今日。
There were about 15 groups total in this festival, and each skit seemed to be somewhat satirical in nature. You can't really tell in the video because my camera has lighting issues, but they all had pretty, I would say, bizarre makeup that kind of enunciated the satirical nature of their skits. I was also having a hard time understanding what they're saying because they had a different dialect than what I'm used to. I heard it's like a southern dialect of Japanese, but instead of words like anata or omae, they would say things like, I think it's omahan or something like that for you, and wachi instead of washi or watashi or whatever your favorite pronoun for I is. Anyways, it was pretty difficult to understand, but I was able to follow the main idea in a lot of them, but I just couldn't find it as funny as everyone else naturally because you kind of have to understand what they're saying. They did have a really interesting way of moving and speaking that was kind of reminiscent of kabuki theater. It definitely isn't the same as kabuki theater, but it had the same kind of feeling. After watching the final skit, me and my friend got back into the car, headed home, and that's the real end of this story. And that's how you turn an hour-and-a-half drive home into 8 hours. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will see you next time.